Elaine Carter sat stiffly on the edge of a sagging motel bed, her hands clutching two battered suitcases as though they were lifelines. 3 days earlier, her daughter had looked her dead in the eye and said the words that still echoed in her head. "Find somewhere else to die, Mom. You're useless now." At 67, Elaine had always prided herself on being obedient, the dependable wife, the silent homemaker, the mother who never asked for anything. So when Veronica spoke those words, she had packed her belongings in quiet dignity, stuffing 43 years of marriage into 2 suitcases and a cardboard box of family photos. Now, here she was in a cheap motel room that smelled of bleach and despair, trying to understand how her life had unraveled so quickly. What Elaine didn't know yet was that her late husband had played the longest game of his life, and that soon the pawn everyone underestimated would rise to become the queen. 2 months earlier, Elaine had still been Mrs. Elaine Carter, the dutiful wife of Robert Carter, a man she had loved and cared for over 4 decades. Robert had been 71 when his heart betrayed him, and Elaine had thought the world itself had stopped turning. The funeral was a blur of flowers, whispers, and tightly clasped hands. Her daughter Veronica swept in wearing a sleek black dress and designer sunglasses, her face arranged in perfect sorrow. "Oh, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with sympathy. "You can't possibly stay in that big house all by yourself. It's too much for you. The stairs, the upkeep. All those memories. It isn't healthy." Elaine had nodded, too numb with grief to see the calculation hidden behind her daughter's eyes. Veronica had always been Robert's little princess. He adored her, the shining daughter who had married Kevin Hayes, a rising investment banker, and produced 2 grandchildren who could do no wrong. Robert showered them all with gifts, vacations, and praise, while Elaine remained in the background, quietly cooking meals, managing the home, and pretending it didn't sting. After Robert's death, Veronica became even more insistent. She began showing up with Kevin, her polished husband who spoke in a patronizing tone Elaine had come to know too well. They brought glossy brochures of retirement communities and spread them across the dining table. "Mom," Veronica urged, "look at these places. They're wonderful. You'd have people your own age, no responsibilities, and all the activities you'd ever want." Kevin chimed in. "It's really the best decision for someone at your stage in life." Elaine sat silently, her tea growing cold in her hands, while her daughter and son-in-law plotted her disappearance from her own home. The turning point came one Tuesday afternoon. Elaine was still living in the house, clinging to the guest room because she couldn't bring herself to sleep in the master bedroom without Robert. Veronica arrived unannounced, Kevin at her side, both dragging 2 oversized suitcases. Elaine frowned. "What's going on?" she asked. Veronica's lips curved into a practiced smile. "Mom, we've made a decision. Kevin got a promotion and we need to move into town immediately. This house is perfect for us." Elaine blinked in disbelief. "Move in. But this is my home." For a flicker of a second, Veronica's mask slipped, and her cold calculation was exposed. "Actually, Mom," she said coolly, "according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the investments, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place." Elaine staggered back as if the words had been a slap. "Veronica, surely there's some mistake." Her daughter folded her arms. "No mistake. Dad knew I'd take better care of his legacy than you ever could. You never understood money, Mom. You were just the wife. Just the wife." 43 years of sacrifice reduced to 3 cruel words. Elaine's lips trembled as she whispered, "But I built this home with him. I raised you here." Veronica's eyes hardened. "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." Elaine's heart cracked open. She packed silently as Kevin carried her bags to the waiting BMW. Veronica watched from the doorway, tapping her watch impatiently. "There's a nice senior complex on Maple Street. Very affordable. I'm sure they have openings." Elaine said nothing. She climbed into the car, her world shrinking in the rearview mirror as her house, Robert's house, now Veronica's house, faded from view. The Sunset Inn was a far cry from the home Elaine had nurtured for decades. Its faded carpet smelled of mildew, the thin towels felt like sandpaper, and the bed groaned every time she shifted. Veronica handed her $200 in cash, slipping it into her hand like a hotel tip. "This should cover you for a few days while you get settled," she said briskly. Kevin added, "I'll transfer some money once we sort through the paperwork." Then they were gone, leaving Elaine alone in the hollow silence of the room. She sat on the sagging mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying Veronica's words. "Find somewhere else to die." Her heart screamed in protest. Something wasn't right. Robert had been many things: traditional, stubborn, sometimes condescending, but he was not cruel. Years earlier he had shown her the will, explaining every detail. She remembered his hand covering hers, saying, "You'll always be provided for, Elaine." So why did Veronica inherit everything? The next morning Elaine made a decision. She found the number for Robert's longtime attorney, Harrison Fitzgerald, a man she had known for decades. His office was downtown, a 20-minute bus ride away. She scraped together the fare from the cash Veronica had given her and boarded the bus, her stomach tight with nerves. When she arrived, Harrison greeted her warmly. He was a dignified man in his 70s with kind eyes behind silver-framed glasses. "Elaine," he said in surprise, "I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Veronica told me you were traveling." Elaine froze. "Traveling," she repeated. "That's what she said," Harrison replied. "But I thought it was strange. I assumed you were too distraught after Robert's death." Elaine swallowed hard. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I need to ask about Robert's will. Veronica told me I inherited nothing." Harrison frowned deeply and gestured for her to sit. "Didn't Veronica give you your copy?" "I gave her the original and several copies after the reading." Elaine's hands shook. "Reading? There was a reading?" Harrison looked confused. "Of course. The day after the funeral. You were supposed to be there." Elaine's heart plummeted. "I wasn't told. Veronica never said a word. She told me she inherited everything." Harrison's jaw tightened as he pulled a thick file folder from his desk. "Elaine, that's impossible. Robert's will was very specific about your inheritance." He flipped open the file and withdrew a notarized document. Elaine recognized Robert's steady signature instantly. Harrison began to read, his voice firm. "I, Robert Carter, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved wife Elaine Carter the following: our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave her 70% of all financial assets and investments, totaling approximately $23 million. Elaine's breath caught. $23 million, she whispered. Her mind reeled. Veronica had told her she was penniless, yet Robert had left her everything. Harrison continued reading. To my daughter, Veronica Carter Hayes, I leave $10 million to be held in trust, with distributions beginning on her 45th birthday, contingent upon her treatment of her mother following my death. Elaine's eyes widened. Contingent upon her treatment of me? Harrison nodded gravely. Robert knew Elaine. He suspected Veronica's attitude toward money and wanted to protect you. If she mistreats you, her share reverts to you. Elaine clutched the arms of the chair. Then by throwing me out by forging papers, she's lost everything? Harrison's voice was steady. That's correct. Veronica's inheritance now belongs to you. All $33 million, plus the house and property. Elaine sat in stunned silence, her mind racing. For days she had believed she was worthless, discarded, and forgotten. But Robert had seen further than she ever imagined. He had written protection into his will, knowing exactly what their daughter might do. Tears blurred Elaine's vision as she whispered. He knew. He really knew. Harrison leaned forward gently. Elaine, your daughter has committed fraud. She forged documents and misled you about your rights. That is a crime. Elder abuse at the very least. Elaine pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. What do I do now? Harrison gave her a small, confident smile. Now, my dear, we call the police. And then we call Veronica to let her know she's about to receive the shock of her life. Harrison wasted no time. He picked up his phone and called Detective Maria Rodriguez, a seasoned officer who specialized in financial crimes. Within an hour, she arrived at his office, carrying a leather folder and a sharp gaze. Elaine sat quietly as Harrison explained everything. Detective Rodriguez listened carefully, then examined the forged will Veronica had given Elaine. "These forgeries are sophisticated," she said, tapping the paper with her pen. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment trick. Someone had knowledge of legal formats and notarization stamps. Likely Kevin was involved. Investment bankers often have access to this kind of network. Elaine's stomach twisted. "So my own daughter and her husband?" The detective nodded grimly. "We'll freeze the accounts immediately. If she's been using your money, every transaction will show up. Don't worry, Mrs. Carter. The law is on your side." Harrison placed a reassuring hand on Elaine's shoulder. Robert prepared for this. Now it's time to fight back. By late afternoon, every account Veronica thought she controlled was frozen. Utility services she had shifted into her name were suspended, and her credit cards began declining. At precisely 3:47 p.m., Elaine's phone rang. Veronica's name flashed on the screen. She hesitated, then answered. "Mom, what is going on?" Veronica demanded, her voice tight with panic. "The bank says the accounts are frozen. Daddy's investments, everything. They're saying you're involved." "Where are you?" Elaine took a deep breath. "I'm sitting in Mr. Fitzgerald's office. Do you remember him? Daddy's attorney. The one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling." Silence followed, broken only by Veronica's shaky breath. "Mom, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Elaine cut in. "You lied. You forged documents. And you tried to throw me out of my own house." Veronica's tone shifted instantly, from outrage to syrupy persuasion. "Mom, listen to me. I was only protecting you. You've never dealt with millions of dollars before. Investments, taxes, properties, these things are complicated. I didn't want you to be overwhelmed." Elaine's voice grew firm, stronger than she had ever heard herself sound. "Protecting me? By giving me $200 and sending me to a motel?" Veronica faltered. "It wasn't like that. You're confused. The grief has clouded your judgment, and someone is manipulating you." Elaine almost laughed at the audacity. Even caught red-handed, her daughter twisted reality to make herself the victim. "No, Veronica," she said evenly. "For the first time in a long time I see things clearly. Your father was right about you." There was a sharp intake of breath on the line. "What do you mean?" Veronica asked, her voice wavering. Elaine steadied herself. "6 months before he died, your father told me he was worried about your attitude. He said you reminded him of his sister Eleanor. Beautiful, charming, but selfish and cruel underneath. That's why he changed the will. He wanted to protect me from exactly this." "That's a lie," Veronica snapped. "Daddy never said that." Elaine's voice turned cold. "Believe what you want. But the papers with his signature say otherwise. You forfeited your inheritance the moment you threw me out." Silence crackled between them. Finally, Veronica whispered, "You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter." Elaine's reply was calm, deadly certain. "Watch me." After hanging up, Elaine looked at Harrison and Detective Rodriguez, both nodding with approval. "She's unraveling already," Harrison said. "It won't be long before she makes a mistake." Detective Rodriguez stood. "We'll prepare the warrant. By tonight, she and Kevin will be in custody." Elaine's phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Veronica. "Mom, please don't do this. Think about the grandchildren." Elaine showed the text to Rodriguez, who smirked. "Classic manipulation. They'll use every emotional weapon they have." Elaine typed back slowly, her hand steady. "I am thinking about them. They deserve to see the truth." For the first time in weeks, she felt something she thought she had lost forever: control. At 8:30 that evening, Detective Rodriguez called Elaine with an update. "We arrested your daughter at Leonard's restaurant. She was having dinner with Kevin and some friends. When we served the warrant, she screamed about false arrest and demanded her lawyer. Turns out he's Kevin's golf buddy with no criminal law experience." Elaine closed her eyes, picturing Veronica in handcuffs, still trying to charm her way out of trouble. "And Kevin?" she asked. "We'll pick him up tomorrow morning at his office. His financial records are already under review. If he was involved in creating those forged documents, he'll face additional charges." Elaine sat quietly, the weight of justice settling over her like a warm blanket. For the first time since Robert's death, she felt safe. The next morning, news traveled fast. By 9 a.m., Elaine's phone rang again, this time from a reporter. "Mrs. Carter, this is Janet Cooper from Channel 7 News. We understand your daughter and son-in-law have been arrested for elder fraud. Would you be willing to share your story on air?" Elaine hesitated. "I'm not sure I'm ready to make public statements." Janet pressed gently. "Your story could help other seniors recognize the warning signs of financial abuse. You'd have full control over how it's presented." Elaine thought of the women she had met over the years: friends, neighbors, church acquaintances. Many of them vulnerable, many dependent on children who might not always act with kindness. Maybe her humiliation could become someone else's warning. "Let me think about it," Elaine said. "I'll call you back." That evening, Elaine returned to her house for the first time since being thrown out. A police officer unlocked the front door, handing her the keys. "It's yours, Mrs. Carter. Always has been." Elaine stepped inside, inhaling the familiar scent of lemon polish and wood. The master bedroom was cluttered with Veronica's designer clothes and cosmetics. Elaine gathered them into garbage bags and set them neatly on the porch. "She can collect them when she makes bail," she murmured. 4 years she had kept the house according to Robert's preferences. His favorite armchair, his choice of curtains, his study untouched. But now, for the first time, Elaine looked around and thought, "This is my home." The following day, Harrison called with updates. "Victoria's bail is set at $50,000. Since her accounts are frozen, she'll have to find someone else to cover it. Kevin's bail is $200,000. The judge wasn't impressed with his history of shady investments. Elaine blinked. "History?" Harrison cleared his throat. "Yes, Kevin has been under investigation for securities fraud. Apparently, he's been involved in schemes long before this." "You weren't aware?" Elaine shook her head. She remembered all those times Veronica and Kevin had spoken down to her about finances, simplifying things as though she were a child. How ironic, she thought, that she now held the very knowledge and power they had tried to deny her. Elaine sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea from her favorite porcelain cup. Her phone buzzed again, another unknown number. "Mrs. Carter, this is Channel 7 following up. We'd like to schedule an interview. Viewers are eager to hear your perspective." Elaine considered. She imagined Veronica watching the evening news from a cell, her pride shattered, her mask of perfection destroyed. She imagined other mothers, frightened, silenced, manipulated, realizing they were not alone. "All right, Miss Cooper," Elaine said slowly. "Let's tell the story. But this time I'll be the one holding all the cards." The day of the interview arrived sooner than Elaine expected. Janet Cooper, the reporter from Channel 7, showed up with a cameraman and a microphone. Elaine wore a simple navy dress, her silver hair brushed neatly. She welcomed them into the living room, now free of Veronica's clutter. "Mrs. Carter," Janet began gently, "can you tell us what happened in your own words?" Elaine took a steady breath. "My daughter told me to find somewhere else to die. She said I was useless. But my husband left a will that said otherwise. She forged documents and tried to take everything. Instead, she lost it all." Janet nodded, eyes intent. "And what do you want other women to know?" Elaine's voice grew stronger. "Never underestimate your worth. Don't let anyone, child, spouse, or anyone else, make you feel disposable. Protect yourself. Questions. And never, ever assume family means loyalty. The interview aired that evening, and the reaction was immediate. Friends from church called, neighbors dropped by with baked goods, and strangers sent letters of encouragement. Elaine sat on her sofa, watching the broadcast. The camera showed her calm face as she spoke about betrayal and survival. "She doesn't look broken at all," Janet's voice narrated. "She looks like a woman reborn." Elaine's phone buzzed non-stop with messages. Some praised her courage. Others shared their own stories of being cheated by children or relatives. Elaine realized she had tapped into something bigger than her own pain. She had become a voice for others who had been silenced. The next morning there was a knock at the door. Elaine opened it to find Veronica standing there, pale and disheveled. She wore yesterday's clothes, her makeup smudged. "Mom, please," she begged, her voice raw. "I need to talk to you." Elaine held the door but didn't step aside. "We talked already. You told me to find somewhere else to die." I listened. Tears welled in Veronica's eyes. "I made a mistake. Terrible mistake. But I'm still your daughter." Elaine's gaze hardened. Daughters don't forge documents to steal from their mothers. Veronica shook her head desperately. "I wasn't stealing. I was trying to protect you." Elaine almost laughed. "Protect me? By handing me $200 and sending me to a motel? That's not protection. That's cruelty." Veronica's composure cracked completely. "Daddy loved me more. He trusted me with money because you never understood it." Elaine's heart clenched at the childish words spilling from her grown daughter. "Your father trusted me enough to leave me everything. He worried about your entitlement. That's why he changed the will. He said you reminded him of his sister. Selfish and charming but destructive." Veronica's face went white. "He never said that." Elaine's voice was calm. "Believe what you want. But the documents don't lie." Veronica collapsed onto the porch steps, sobbing into her hands. For the first time, Elaine felt no urge to comfort her. Years of sacrifices, silence, and dismissal rose in her chest. This was no longer about mother and daughter, it was about justice. Kevin's arrest followed soon after. Police escorted him from his office in handcuffs as cameras clicked. Reporters shouted questions about fraud and forged documents. At home, Elaine watched the footage on television. "Your son-in-law has a history," Harrison explained over the phone. "The evidence against him is strong. Securities fraud, forgery, conspiracy. It's all piling up." Elaine closed her eyes, thinking of the smug way Kevin had always lectured her at family dinners. "You wouldn't understand, Mom," he would say with a condescending smile. Now the irony was almost too delicious. He was the one who didn't understand that arrogance always has a price. A week later, Harrison came by with paperwork. "We've secured full control of the estate, Elaine. Everything is legally in your name. The accounts, the house, the investments. It's all yours now." Elaine stared at the documents, her name shining in black ink where Robert's signature had once been. "It feels strange," she admitted. "For so long I thought of everything as his. Now it's mine." Harrison smiled. "It was always meant to be yours. Robert wanted you secure, independent. He trusted you more than anyone." Elaine ran her hand across the papers. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just the wife or the mother or the background figure. She was the owner. Elaine began making changes immediately. Veronica had drawn up plans for a wine cellar and a luxury kitchen remodel. Elaine ripped them up and instead hired a local contractor to turn Robert's old study into an art studio. "I've always wanted to paint," she confessed to Harrison. "But Robert never thought it was practical." Harrison chuckled. "Well, it's your house now. Be as impractical as you like." Elaine also called the library to donate a portion of the funds in Robert's memory. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her life. Every decision she made was a step away from the shadow of obedience, and a step toward her own identity. Word of her story spread beyond the local news. A national morning show reached out, inviting Elaine to share her experience. At first, she hesitated. The idea of cameras and lights made her nervous. But then she thought of Veronica's sneer, Kevin's lectures, and the countless women who had written to her. "If my story can save one woman from going through what I did," she told Janet Cooper, "then I'll do it." On the day of the broadcast, Elaine walked onto the set in a simple lavender suit. The host introduced her as the widow who turned betrayal into empowerment. Elaine smiled softly. She wasn't just telling her story anymore, she was rewriting it. Meanwhile, Veronica tried every trick she knew to escape the consequences. She left voicemails begging Elaine to drop the charges. She sent long, rambling letters full of apologies mixed with blame. One letter ended with, "Think about the grandchildren. Don't you want them to remember you kindly?" Elaine showed the letter to Detective Rodriguez, who shook her head. "This is manipulation, plain and simple. She's still trying to use guilt to control you." Elaine agreed. "I raised her to believe she was entitled to everything. That was my mistake. But I won't make another one." She folded the letter neatly and dropped it into the evidence file. On the evening news, the anchor reported that both Veronica and Kevin faced multiple felony charges, including fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Bail hearings dragged on, but Elaine no longer cared about their excuses. She stood in her kitchen, sipping tea, listening to the hum of her house. For decades, she had lived in Robert's shadow, her own desires muted. But now, with every headline, every letter of support, every stroke of her paintbrush in her new studio, she felt herself becoming something new. Not just a widow, not just a mother, but a woman who had survived betrayal and risen stronger. As she locked the doors that night, she whispered to the empty house, "This is my life now, and I won't give it away again." The trial preparation began in earnest. Harrison and Detective Rodriguez sat with Elaine at her dining table, stacks of files spread around them. "The prosecution has more than enough evidence," Rodriguez explained. "Forgery, fraud, conspiracy, it's airtight. But they'll still try to argue Veronica was acting in your best interest." Elaine gave a bitter laugh. "By telling me to find somewhere else to die." Harrison nodded. "Exactly. Your testimony will be critical." Elaine looked down at her hands, once accustomed to folding laundry and stirring soup, now trembling at the thought of a courtroom. "I don't want to destroy my daughter," she whispered. Rodriguez leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, she tried to destroy you. Justice isn't cruelty, it's protection. Not just for you but for others like you." Elaine closed her eyes. She knew the detective was right. The first court hearing was packed. Reporters filled the benches, cameras flashed outside, and Elaine felt the weight of hundreds of eyes. Veronica entered in a designer suit, her hair styled, her face carefully made up, as if appearances could erase her crimes. Kevin followed, shackled, his expression grim. When Veronica saw her mother seated at the front, she tried to smile. "Mom," she whispered as she passed, "we can fix this." Elaine didn't flinch. She kept her gaze forward, her spine straight. The judge called the session to order, and for the first time, Veronica realized charm would not save her here. During the hearing, the prosecution presented the forged documents. The notary stamp was traced to a printing company Kevin had used for other fraudulent projects. The jury murmured as evidence piled higher. Elaine's heart pounded when her name was called. She walked to the witness stand, her voice steady though her hands trembled. The prosecutor asked gently, "Mrs. Carter, what did your daughter say to you the day she forced you out of your home?" Elaine swallowed hard. She said, "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Veronica's eyes flashed with fury, but Elaine didn't look at her. For the first time, she spoke the truth out loud, and the words carried the weight of justice. Veronica's lawyer tried to paint a different picture. "Mrs. Carter," he said smoothly, Isn't it possible that your daughter was concerned for your well-being? That she was simply urging you to move somewhere safer? Elaine met his gaze calmly. Concern looks like compassion. What I received was cruelty. My daughter handed me $200 and sent me to a motel after taking my house. Does that sound like concern to you? The lawyer faltered, flipping through his notes. Elaine's voice grew firmer. Robert left me everything because he trusted me. He put conditions on Veronica's inheritance because he knew her character. He was right. The jury watched rapt. The lawyer had no further questions. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones pressed forward as Elaine stepped down the marble steps. Mrs. Carter, do you feel vindicated? One asked. Elaine paused, choosing her words carefully. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. No one, family or not, has the right to take away someone's dignity. Her words made the evening news, sparking conversations across the city. Talk shows debated elder abuse, financial manipulation, and the courage of mothers who stood up for themselves. Elaine watched the coverage at home, sipping tea. She felt the stirrings of something she never expected: purpose. Meanwhile, Veronica struggled in jail. The once polished woman who had breezed through life with designer bags and catered dinners now shared a cell with strangers. She called Elaine repeatedly, leaving voicemails full of weeping apologies. Mom, I was wrong. Please, please forgive me. Don't let them keep me here. Elaine listened once, then deleted the rest. Forgiveness was one thing. Erasing consequences was another. Kevin, on the other hand, maintained silence. His pride kept him from begging, but the evidence against him was even stronger. Elaine found it almost poetic. The man who had always claimed she was too ignorant to understand finance was now exposed as a fraud. As the trial dragged on, Elaine's life began to shift. She hired an interior decorator to freshen the house, choosing colors she loved rather than what Robert or Veronica had preferred. The master bedroom was repainted in soft lavender, and the art studio began filling with canvases splashed with bright colors. A friend from church visited and gasped. Elaine, I didn't know you painted. Elaine smiled. Neither did I. I never allowed myself the time before. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that had been hidden for decades. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. One evening, Janet Cooper returned for a follow-up interview. She found Elaine in her studio, a paintbrush in hand. Viewers loved your story, Janet said warmly. You've inspired so many. Do you realize how many seniors see you as a role model now? Elaine set the brush down, wiping her hands. I'm just telling the truth. If it helps others, then maybe all this pain was worth it. Janet tilted her head. Do you forgive your daughter? Elaine hesitated. I can forgive her as my child. But I can't excuse her actions. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. The camera captured her words, and they spread across the country, resonating with thousands who had lived through similar betrayals. The trial reached its climax when Kevin finally broke. Faced with overwhelming evidence, he struck a plea deal, admitting to forgery and conspiracy in exchange for a lighter sentence. His confession implicated Veronica fully, leaving her defense in ruins. In court, when the judge read the verdict, guilty on all counts, Veronica's legs gave out beneath her. She sobbed uncontrollably as marshals led her away. Elaine sat silently, her face calm. She had imagined this moment many times, but when it came, she felt no triumph, only a quiet release. Justice had been served, and she no longer carried the weight of doubt. That night, Elaine walked through her house alone. She touched the polished banister, the soft curtains, the walls that had witnessed her life. 4 decades, this house had been Robert's, then Veronica's ambition. Now, it was finally hers. She stopped in front of the mirror, studying the woman reflected back. Silver-haired, steady-eyed, no longer obedient, no longer invisible, she whispered softly. I am not useless. I never was. In that moment, Elaine Carter became more than a widow, more than a discarded mother. She became the woman holding all the cards, the queen who had risen from betrayal, stronger than anyone imagined. The weeks after the trial were quieter, though the echo of betrayal still lingered in Elaine's mind. She received letters every day, some from strangers thanking her for speaking out, others from organizations asking her to share her story. One letter stood out, a handwritten note from a woman in Ohio. "My son tried to trick me into signing over my house. After hearing about you, I found the courage to say no. Thank you." Elaine pressed the paper to her chest, tears stinging her eyes. She had never imagined her suffering could help someone else. That night she called Harrison. "I want to start something. A fund maybe, a program to help women like me." Harrison's voice warmed. "Robert would be proud of you, Elaine. And so am I." One Sunday afternoon, Elaine was sitting on the porch when a hesitant knock came at the gate. She looked up and saw her grandchildren, Lily and Thomas, standing nervously with backpacks slung over their shoulders. "Grandma," Lily whispered. Elaine's heart clenched. "Children," she said softly, opening the gate. They rushed forward, hugging her tightly. "Mom said we couldn't see you anymore," Thomas confessed. "But we miss you." Elaine's throat tightened. "You will always be welcome here." She brought them inside, poured hot chocolate, and listened as they shared stories of confusion and fear. "Grandma, is Mommy going to jail forever?" Lily asked. Elaine sighed, brushing the girl's hair back. "Your mother made mistakes, big ones. But she's still your mom. All we can do is hope she learns from them." The visit with her grandchildren reignited a spark inside Elaine. She realized she had a chance to break the cycle, to teach them values different from their parents' greed. She began inviting them over on weekends, helping them with homework, baking cookies, and telling them stories about Robert. "Your grandpa loved honesty," she explained one evening. "He believed in fairness, even when it was hard." Thomas frowned. "But Mom said you were weak." Elaine smiled gently. "People say things when they want power. But strength isn't about controlling others. It's about standing up for what's right." The children listened, their wide eyes reflecting a lesson no classroom could teach. Meanwhile, Veronica's letters continued to arrive from prison. Elaine opened one, her hands trembling. "Mom, I can't sleep. I keep thinking about what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm begging you not to turn the children against me." Elaine read the words carefully. She wasn't turning anyone against Veronica. The truth was enough. She wrote back once, keeping her message simple. "I will always love you as my daughter. But love doesn't erase consequences. Change your heart, and maybe one day your children will see a different mother." She mailed the letter and closed that chapter, her conscience clear. Elaine's new life unfolded in ways she hadn't expected. She began painting seriously, her studio filling with bright canvases of flowers, landscapes, and even portraits of Robert. One of her friends persuaded her to enter a local gallery exhibition. Nervous but excited, Elaine agreed. On opening night, she stood among strangers admiring her work. A woman approached, smiling. "You're the artist. These paintings are full of strength." Elaine flushed with pride. "I only started recently." The woman shook her head. "No, you've carried this strength for years. Now it shows on canvas." Elaine realized she wasn't just painting pictures. She was painting her rebirth. As her confidence grew, Elaine expanded her vision. With Harrison's guidance, she set up a foundation called the Carter Trust for Dignity. Its mission was simple: to provide legal aid and housing support for elderly people facing abuse from family. Reporters covered the launch, praising Elaine's courage. During the press conference, a journalist asked, "Why dedicate your inheritance to this cause?" Elaine answered firmly, "Because dignity is priceless. If my story can protect even one parent from betrayal, then the money is well spent." Applause followed, and Elaine felt Robert's presence beside her, as if he were nodding in approval. But not everyone was pleased. Kevin's relatives began whispering in social circles, accusing Elaine of humiliating their family. One afternoon, Kevin's sister confronted her outside a cafe. "You ruined my brother's life," she hissed. Elaine met her gaze calmly. "No. He ruined his own life when he chose fraud over honesty." The woman scoffed. "You're just an old woman who got lucky." Elaine smiled faintly. "Luck had nothing to do with it. Choices did. And I chose to stop being silent." She walked away, her dignity intact, leaving the younger woman fuming. Months passed, and Elaine's reputation grew. She was invited to speak at universities, churches, and community centers. Each time, she shared her story with honesty, never hiding the pain but always emphasizing resilience. "I was told I was useless," she told one audience, "but I discovered I was stronger than anyone realized. If betrayal can break you, then truth can rebuild you." Audiences gave her standing ovations, and younger women hugged her afterward, calling her an inspiration. Elaine no longer felt invisible. She felt seen, valued, and powerful. One evening, after a long day of speaking, Elaine returned home to find a small package on her porch. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a note. "To Mom, from Veronica. I made this in the prison workshop. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to give you something real." Elaine held the necklace in her hand, tears filling her eyes. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start. She placed the necklace on her dresser. "Maybe one day," she whispered into the quiet. Elaine's journey had transformed her completely. She was no longer the obedient wife or the discarded mother. She was a survivor, a leader, and a woman who had turned betrayal into purpose. Standing in her art studio one evening, she gazed at a finished painting of a chessboard. At the center stood a queen, tall and unshaken, while pawns scattered at her feet. Elaine smiled. "Robert," she murmured, "you always knew the game. But you also knew I could win it." She dipped her brush in gold paint and signed her name boldly across the canvas. For the first time in her life, Elaine Carter wasn't just part of the story. She was the one writing it. Elaine's foundation quickly grew beyond her expectations. Donations poured in from people across the country who resonated with her story. Lawyers volunteered their time, community leaders offered support, and senior citizens wrote letters of gratitude. One afternoon, Harrison came by with a wide grin. "Elaine, do you realize how big this is becoming? You're not just helping a handful of women, you're starting a movement." Elaine laughed softly. "I never wanted fame. I just wanted dignity. But maybe this is Robert's last gift to me. Purpose." Harrison nodded. "And you're carrying it well." Her grandchildren continued visiting, growing closer with each passing week. Lily loved painting in the studio with her grandmother, while Thomas helped in the garden. One Saturday, Thomas asked, "Grandma, are you mad at Mommy forever?" Elaine knelt, looking into his innocent eyes. "No, sweetheart. I'm hurt by what she did, but anger doesn't heal anyone. I hope one day she'll learn and change. Until then, you and Lily will always have me." The children hugged her tightly. For Elaine, those moments mattered more than all the headlines and applause. They were the seeds of a new legacy. Veronica's prison sentence was handed down. 8 years for fraud and elder abuse. Elaine sat quietly in the courtroom, listening as the judge declared, "Actions have consequences, no matter who you are." Veronica wept openly, looking back at her mother with desperate eyes. For a moment, Elaine's heart ached. But when she remembered the motel room, the $200, the cruel words, "Find somewhere else to die," her resolve hardened. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "This is your lesson, Veronica. Learn it well." After the sentencing, reporters swarmed again. "Mrs. Carter, do you feel justice was served?" Elaine answered simply, "Yes. Not because of the punishment, but because the truth was revealed." That evening, she lit a candle in the quiet of her living room and prayed, not for revenge but for healing. "God," she whispered, "help my daughter see the error of her ways. And help me keep walking this new path." For the first time in years, her prayers felt lighter, Not desperate cries of survival but steady words of strength. Months turned into a year. Elaine's art gained recognition, her foundation flourished, and her story became a case study in universities. At a community event, a young woman approached her. "Mrs. Carter, my brother tried to take advantage of me after my divorce. Hearing your story gave me the courage to fight back." "Thank you." Elaine hugged her, realizing that her pain had become someone else's shield. She thought back to Robert's chessboard, the game he had always loved. He had set the pieces in motion, but she had played the final move. One summer afternoon, Elaine hosted a small gathering in her garden. Friends, supporters, and her grandchildren filled the space with laughter. As she served lemonade, Lily tugged her sleeve. "Grandma, will you teach me to paint like you?" Elaine smiled. "Of course, darling. But remember, painting isn't about being perfect. It's about telling your truth." Lily nodded seriously, and Elaine realized she was passing down not just a skill but a philosophy. That truth, expressed honestly, was the greatest legacy of all. Though Veronica remained in prison, Elaine didn't cut her off completely. Once a month, she wrote her daughter a letter. Some were short, others longer, always with the same message. "I love you, but you must change." She never knew if the words sank in, but writing them eased her heart. She refused to let bitterness define her. "Hate destroys the one who holds it," she told Harrison one day. "I won't let that happen to me." Harrison smiled. "That's why you've won, Elaine. Not just the case. Life." As the years passed, Elaine's influence reached even further. She spoke at a national conference on elder rights, her voice clear and steady before thousands. "I was told I was useless," she declared, "but I stand here today to tell you, you are never useless. You are valuable, worthy, and powerful, no matter your age." The audience rose in thunderous applause. Elaine felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were tears of triumph. She had transformed from a discarded widow into a symbol of resilience. Late one evening, Elaine sat alone in her studio, gazing at her latest painting, a woman standing tall against a storm, her silver hair flowing like a crown. She touched the brush to the canvas, adding a final stroke of gold across the woman's heart. "That's me," she whispered. "Not broken. Not forgotten. Whole." The house was silent, but she no longer feared silence. It was peace, and it belonged to her. For the first time, Elaine felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. On the anniversary of Robert's death, Elaine visited his grave with Lily and Thomas by her side. She laid fresh lilies down, her voice soft but certain. "Robert, you worried about me. You planned for me. And because of that I found my strength. Don't worry anymore. I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving." The children held her hands, their small fingers warm against her own. As they walked back to the car, Elaine smiled. She was no longer the obedient wife or the discarded mother. She was Elaine Carter, the woman who had been underestimated, betrayed, and cast aside, yet rose to claim her life. The pawn had become the queen, and her story was far from over.